So here's something interesting that I stumbled across recently. Coming off the heels of everything that's been going on with COVID, Big Pharma has really been something that has pissed me off for quite some time. And I stumbled across something the other day. I said, you know what? I think I need to talk about this, okay? DCA powder. I don't know how many of you might be familiar with it already, but if you're not, there's this stuff that's going around about DCA powder being a potential treatment for cancer, okay? Now, you're going to see on the screen right over here, I'm going to have it put up. This is coming from Healthline, okay? DCA cancer treatment, or DCA, is a synthetic chemical used for cosmetic and clinical purposes. It's commercially available as a cauterizing agent, meaning it burns the skin. The drug became popular in 2007 after a Canadian study suggested DCA might be able to reverse cancer growth. While some experimental treatments have shown interesting results, DCA hasn't been proven safe or effective for treating cancer. It is not approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, as a cancer treatment. Until further research is done, it is not recommended to use DCA as an alternative cancer treatment. Pharmaceutical-grade DCA isn't readily available to the general public, nor is it safe to be administered alone. Okay, so hearing that and reading that, you conclude that this is something experimental, but perhaps doesn't show that it's very promising or something hasn't been done with it yet. Perhaps it just needs more testing done. Well, I remember, if you caught it, this was first coming about in 2007, right? So if you don't know anything about this, the questions in your mind right now might be, does it just need more testing? Is it actually dangerous? Is it not really effective? I'm going to start by a disclaimer by saying this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher, okay? So I'm not going to say that it is effective. What I'm about to show you, though, is part of the problem. Because if this is effective, what you're about to see explains why it probably isn't being used any more than it is, and why research isn't actually being put into this thing to figure out if it can work or not. Take a look at this clip.
Applications and is relatively cheap. But as CTV's medical specialist Avis Favreau explains, redeveloping the drug may not fit into the business plans of the big pharmaceutical companies.
The tumor, the 3D
Dr. Evangelos Mikalakis has given cancer researchers a brand new lead with an old drug, a cheap, inexpensive powder that costs just pennies a dose.
You typically get this eureka kind of feeling, and it's actually the most exciting thing scientists can get.
The drug, called DCA in short, has been used for decades in humans with some rare inherited diseases. When he added it to the water of mice and rats given human cancers, the results surprised him.
And has this big tumor growing in his back. So you can see that even after 3 weeks there is a significant or 70% decrease in tumor size.
It shrunk brain, breast, and lung tumors in the animals in a matter of weeks, and the drug had no side effects, confirmed by tests of DCA in humans for other diseases.
This kind of results, to my mind, are as good as it gets.
And it seems to work by reviving the energy-producing components of human cells, allowing the cells to work normally again, triggering cancerous cells to commit suicide. Scientists agree that DCA now needs to be tested quickly in human cancer patients.
This is exactly what we want, a drug that has activity, but has also minimal side effects for patients.
But there's a problem. DCA isn't owned by any pharmaceutical company. There's no patent on it. So on one hand, it could become a very inexpensive new treatment for cancer. On the other, drug companies won't be interested in funding studies for a drug that won't make them a profit.
This is a difficult question because typically, there are market considerations.
So now Dr. Mikalakis has to find someone who will pay for the next round of testing.
We hope that we can attract the interest of universities here in Canada and in the United States.
And he doesn't want to let the medical dream of a cheap, effective anti-cancer drug disappear just because it might not make someone a lot of money. It costs, some say, about $100 million to get a new drug through all the phases of testing onto the market. So it will be interesting to see if this old drug actually gets a new chance at becoming an anti-cancer medication. Lloyd?
Well, Avis, your report tells us that this drug has great promise. So why aren't companies and institutions lining up to get behind it?
Well, first of all, Lloyd, this is the initial report. Secondly, because the drug isn't patented, it's an old drug, if someone invests in researching it, they're not going to make a profit because anyone can make it. So we'll have to see. There are some agencies, public agencies, government agencies that may give it funding, but that's still a question that will have to be answered.
But unless big pharmaceutical companies are behind these things, they may go nowhere. Is that it?
Well, actually, Lloyd, I've had 2 other stories where drugs have shown great promise in the preclinical phase, and because they were orphan drugs and no one picked up, nobody could get the patent on it, they've gone nowhere. So I will be keeping an eye on this one.
Thank you very much, Avis.
So there you go. It's a very old drug. It's been around for quite some time. It's been used for other things. And so guess what? It can't be patented to be used. You can't, Pfizer, Moderna, or any of the other people that you see over here, they can't patent the drug and make money off of it. And to, as you heard him say, to get a new drug to the market, it's going to cost all that money to do the research. And they said, like, well, what, $100 million now? That begs the question right there. Is that really what it should cost? See, I guess the what you might call paranoid part of me would go, does it cost that much because some of these people are making it hard to get new medicines on the market? You know what I mean? Like, what? Why does it cost so much to get a new medicine out there? You know? Now, some of my libertarian friends would, because I've heard them make the argument before, like we need to avoid patents. Like the problem with why a lot of medications cost so much is because of the patents that are put on them. Then they can charge an arm and a leg and get away with it. No one else can make it, and that's true. But this ultimately speaks to a reason of why private enterprise and healthcare and medicines are a marriage made in hell, in my opinion. Okay, this speaks to why there are some things I do think the private sector does great at. I'm not convinced that medicine is one of them. I'm just not. Okay, I've heard the arguments about why government is bad too, but the problem comes down with the private enterprise. Private enterprise is there to make money. Okay, now if I've got to put the research into something to make it, a phone, for example, a laptop, a television, whatever, a car. My competitors can make something similar, but they got to do their own research and their own stuff because the patent, when I patent that, it's mine, and that's how I make my money off of it. You can't just take my work and use it to make your own stuff. You didn't spend the time and the money and the hassle to create this product and perfect it so that you can put it out there on the market. So that's why those things like the patent protections are put into place. But the problem with medicine is we're not talking about buying cars. We're not talking about buying cell phones. See, all those things are luxuries. Medicine is, in a lot of cases, something that could be life-saving, like a cancer treatment, for example. So no one's going to really invest into trying to make something work that any Tom, Dick, and Harry and Susan could come along and steal from out from underneath them and make their own version of it, for example. They want to make the money. If they're going to put that time and effort in, they want to be able to make sure they can make the money off of it. So not having patent protections and this being done by private enterprise in a lot of cases is not going to incentivize them to put a lot of time and effort into it, which is why they don't want to invest in something that's already been around. They can't patent it. Therefore, they're not going to be able to make buku money off of it when it's all said and done. If only that sounds like something else that came up lately. Because remember in that article, now granted, this thing hasn't gone through all the proper tests, but the things that have been done show that it's promising, show that it at least shows signs of potentially being something that could work. Now, we're coming off the heels of a pandemic. Can anyone think of something that people started talking about? There were rumblings here and there about a drug that was originally made for something else, and people started to kind of get the idea that it might be an effective COVID treatment. Can you think of it? It seems like it started with an I and ended with an N and had, ver and mectin in the middle somewhere. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about out there, right? Maybe you can think of what it was called. But there were rumblings about that being able to work for COVID. And just like this DCA, Big Pharma can't patent it. Now, they've since made their own versions, which you could argue they could do if someone invested in this, right? But again, that's going to cost a lot. It's going to cost a lot to do something like that. And unfortunately, I just don't think people are going to take the time and invest in it. Okay? Not every big pharma company made a COVID pill either. Only a couple did, from my understanding, right? And the original one, they absolutely demonized. We can't get true studies, really. The few studies that have come out show promising signs. But no one's really putting the time and effort into researching this to see if it can actually work out well or not. And the people who talked about it were demonized, censored. They had their videos yanked down from social media, YouTube, okay? You couldn't talk about it because it's misinformation. You just can't even discuss it because you're leading someone down the wrong path. You're promoting medical misinformation by talking about this. So we label it as a horse-paced, CNN, everybody jumps on board. They label a medicine that won a Nobel Prize as a horse drug only, even though there is a human version. And then you find out what RFK Jr. reported in his book, which is if there's the whole reason of getting the emergency authorization for the jabs was that to do it, there can't be anything out there that can already treat what you've already got. So if there's something out there and we want to bypass that, then we've got to convince people that thing doesn't actually work. It doesn't work, and you better not take it. So that would make sense why they did what they did, right? So again, now turning your attention to this, now you got to ask the same question. If this thing showed such promising signs in the beginning, why is nothing being done about it? Because unfortunately, as long as this is something controlled by the private sector whose end game is to make money, I don't care how promising it looks. If they're not making money off of it, they're not going to do anything with it. And ultimately, is that what's really best for the consumer in this case? Like even for my libertarian friends, and the conservatives, if the idea is what's best for the consumer, and this whole system makes it so it's not what's best for the consumer, it's what's best for the company, because in this case, what's best for the consumer is the best medication that actually works. But the system makes it so they don't want to invest in something like that unless they can make a lot of money off of it. And then when they do invest in something and they're able to patent it, no one else can then make it really without coming up with some version of their own. And the cost that it takes to make this stuff, it is a terrible, terrible system when you break it down. And it is a perfect example of why Big Pharma is one of the biggest problems that we have in our nation. But let me know what you guys think. I probably sounded like crap. Unfortunately, the seasonal allergies have hit me. We've gone from hot to cold and hot to cold and hot to cold multiple times in the last week, and it finally took its toll on me. I've got the heavy sinus issues right now. Walk around look like I'm either stoned or crying all the time, and so it's kind of messed with my voice. I sound pretty nasally, so you'll have to forgive me for sounding like crap in this video. But I thought it was something that it's pretty important. I stumbled across it and I said, you know what? Should make a video about this because I think this is something that needs to be talked about. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think about what was seen in this video? Do you think there's anything to this DCA that it could be an effective cancer treatment? Let me know what you think in the comment box down below. If you like this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up to help us out. And if you just found the channel for the first time, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you want to keep watching the videos, then make sure you ring that bell, set the notifications to all, or you're never going to know when I upload another one. That's just how YouTube treats us over here. We appreciate you watching. Hope you're all doing well. We'll see you next time right here on the Lone Wolf Podcast. Take care, everyone.